This is a quick update, and now we're going to talk about Silas Malafaia, who is being investigated by the federal police. Do you know why? For having organized the protests on August 3rd, yeah, my friend, now it's a crime to protest against the government. According to the folks at the Supreme Court, he's part of this international conspiracy that Eduardo Bolsonaro is involved in and all that to obstruct the Supreme Court's proceedings. Look at the absurdity these people have reached. They're criminalizing protests in Brazil. They're banning protests in Brazil, claiming that it would interfere with the Supreme Court's work. You can take two things from this. First thing, the Supreme Court was hurt by the protest on August 3rd. That's what I keep telling you. They thought no one would show up. They thought the protests would be small, but the protests were huge. It caught everyone by surprise, and everyone was upset about it. That's why all those actions on Monday, Bolsonaro's arrest and all that stuff happened. Why? Because people got desperate. They saw that Bolsonaro still has a lot of support in Brazil, right? And now they're going after Silas Malafaia. But man, let me tell you something. This is something that could really ignite things among evangelicals and Christians here in Brazil, huh? This news was suggested by Me Desbloqueio, Eu Te Amo, Peter, Forças Armadas São Fofas Armadas, and several other people. Thanks to everyone who suggested news on our website, visãolibertaria.com, and thank you for watching our video. If you enjoy our content, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, okay? So, look, Pastor Silas Malafaia is being investigated by the federal police in the inquiry about obstruction of the investigation into the attempted coup. So what happened, right? When Eduardo Bolsonaro was over there in the United States and, well, asked Trump to intervene with the Supreme Court, that sort of thing. And then Trump talked about it, right? There was that statement from Secretary Marco Rubio talking about the Magnitsky Act issue regarding Alexandre de Moraes and so on that was back in May this year. And the people at the Supreme Court understood that as obstruction of the investigation. How is that obstruction of the investigation? What kind of logic is that? Come on. Eduardo Bolsonaro doesn't have the power to order Trump around. The most he can do is ask for help, right? He asked for help just as, by the way, the PT has done countless times over there. But then Alexandre de Moraes decided, no, that this is forbidden, that you can't do that, and so on. I might be wrong, but I have the right to stick to my stupidity until the end after all, right? And the situation is only getting worse because of this. So what did he do then? Back in May, he started this case in which the main accused are Eduardo Bolsonaro and Paulo Figueiredo, but he also included Bolsonaro because Bolsonaro supposedly sent money to his son who was abroad. So he considered that Bolsonaro was also part of this obstruction that happened there in that situation. Look at how illogical this is. Since when does sending money to your son to support him mean you're complicit with anyone? And even again, what Eduardo Bolsonaro did wasn't wrong at all, right? So this whole thing is just absurd. In fact, Bolsonaro's arrest is related to this other case, not even the so-called coup case with Alexandre de Moraes. It's supposedly about American interference in Brazil and all that, which again, makes no sense. Eduardo Bolsonaro doesn't control Trump. He doesn't do that over there, right? He asked, but in the end, the decision was Trump's, right? But now we found out this investigation, like several of Alexandre de Moraes' investigations, is confidential. Nobody knows who's involved in the investigation and who isn't. It's only when he starts taking action that people find out. And now it's been discovered that Silas Malafaia is being investigated by the federal police in this case, along with Eduardo Bolsonaro and so on. And then, man, that's really strange. Why is he being investigated in this case? After all, what did Silas Malafaia do? Silas Malafaia didn't go to the United States. Silas Malafaia didn't do anything, nothing at all. So here's what people are saying. Silas Malafaia was the organizer of the rally in support of Jair Bolsonaro on August 3rd, an event where Bolsonaro appeared in a video broadcast on social media to third parties, which led to his house arrest on August 4th. In other words, if you organize a protest, my friend, now you're considered part of the obstruction of legal proceedings in Brazil. You can't protest in Brazil anymore if you're criticizing the Supreme Court. Wow, what a vibrant democracy we're living in, huh? We're at a point here in Brazil where protests are forbidden. Alexandre de Moraes is investigating Silas Malafaia because he organized a protest, a peaceful protest. Not a single trash can was overturned on August 3rd. Everyone went out to the streets. I was there in Copacabana. We met up with everyone. We held our demonstration without any violence, without any destruction, without, again, not even a trash can was overturned. And yet now it's forbidden. Silas Malafaia is being investigated for calling for that protest on August 3rd. Look at the message the Supreme Court is trying to send. First, that they were hurt. Of course they were hurt. If they hadn't been hurt, they wouldn't be persecuting Silas Malafaia. And second, it's forbidden to protest. You can't criticize the Supreme Court. Criticizing the Supreme Court is considered obstruction of the coup process or whatever they call it. You can't do it. Everyone has to like the Supreme Court. The next rule now from Alexandre de Moraes is that he might even throw in jail the people who conducted the survey, showing that most Brazilians see our situation as a judicial dictatorship. He'll jail those who did this research because you're obstructing our process. You can't obstruct our process, justice. We have the right to do everything and no one can challenge it. No one can complain. And if you complain, it's undemocratic. That's not a very vibrant democracy, is it? It's really unbelievable, man. The worst part is that Malafaia is saying here, look, this thing you're talking about, and the newspaper report got in touch with Malafaia to ask what he had to say about the investigation, right? This police investigation. He said, check this out. Yeah, Sila, Malafaia said he is unaware of being under investigation, that he hasn't received any notification from the federal police. This thing you're telling me is incredible news. Do I by any chance have access to American authorities? Or is this undeniable proof that the Brazilian democratic state is being thrown in the trash, run by the robe-wearing dictator Alexandre de Moraes, who persecutes anyone who speaks out? What kind of democracy is this, people? He's absolutely right. Come on. Look, I don't even like Malafaia, okay? I've got a lot of disagreements with him, but the fact is he's absolutely right in this regard, man. This kind of thing is just absurd, isn't it? Here, look. Silas Malafaia is under investigation by the federal police. What do we know? The evangelical pastor Silas Malafaia is being investigated by the federal police, according to Globo News, one of the biggest religious leaders in Brazil. According to the report, he was included in the same investigation that is looking into Jair Bolsonaro, Eduardo Bolsonaro, and Paulo Figueiredo. It's because, yeah, here, I only know about this from Globo News. I haven't received any. No notification at all. What kind of country is this where the federal police leak accusations against someone to Globo and then you all find out about it, right? I'm being investigated by the federal police in the inquiry. I respect the federal police, which is an honor for Brazilians, but there is a federal police that serves Lula and Alexandre de Moraes. They included me in the inquiry for obstruction of justice, coercion, I don't know what else, whatever. First of all, I don't speak English. I don't know any American authorities, so how is he doing? Now, they're saying that the demonstration on August 3rd, my friend, was an attack on democracy. You see? A demonstration has now become an attack on democracy. A peaceful, orderly demonstration, they didn't even knock over a trash can. Now it's being called an attack on democracy. Protesting in Brazil has become an attack on democracy. Can you believe how absurd this is, man? He's here because of this. Look, the report highlights that Malafaia was the organizer of the rally in support of Jair Bolsonaro on August 3rd, an event where Bolsonaro appeared. In other words, organizing a demonstration in Brazil is now a crime. Now you'll be investigated by the police. Look how absurd this is, my friend. Let me tell you something. These people are playing with fire. Andre Mendonça said this. Look, Andre Mendonça, who is also an evangelical, he issued a warning to his colleagues at the Supreme Court and to Hugo Mota after Malafaia was included in the federal police investigation. Supreme Court Justice Andre Mendonça came to the defense of Pastor Silas Malafaia, addressing colleagues on the court and the president of the Chamber of Deputies. After learning that Malafaia had been included in the federal police investigation, Mendonça reached out to colleagues on the court, such as the senior justice Gilmar Mendes. According to reports obtained by the column, Mendonça is said to have warned that including the pastor has the potential to further heat up the atmosphere in the country. I have absolutely no doubt about it. Especially because the issue isn't the pastor himself. The issue is why the pastor was brought into this story. He was brought into this story because he organized a demonstration. A peaceful demonstration. They didn't even knock over a trash can. In other words, it was a completely peaceful protest, a demonstration, and yet he was included in the investigation. He's now being investigated for having organized a demonstration. What a democracy, my friend. There's a lot of so-called democracy in this country, isn't there? Here, look, Mendonça is also said to have pointed out that this action could put a large group of evangelicals in opposition to the court. By the way, as a rule, they already are, right? But this could make these people even more upset with the court, right? According to colleagues at the court, the magistrate is trying to calm things down, right? I would say that, well, what needs to be done in this case is to show that, come on, peaceful protest is part of democracy, even against anything including court decisions, obviously. Banning people from protesting is not something someone who defends democracy would do, as Mr. Alexandre de Moraes is proposing, right? And of course, the one who put his name in the inquiry was Alexandre de Moraes, right? Obviously, everyone knows that, right? They never mention Alexandre de Moraes by name at any point, but who is in charge of this inquiry? It's managed by Alexandre de Moraes. So, for the federal police to add someone to the inquiry, they need the judge's permission. They got permission from Alexandre de Moraes. So, why aren't they mentioning Alexandre de Moraes by name? Because Alexandre de Moraes already has a bad reputation, right? People are increasingly seeing that he's the one destroying Brazilian democracy under the supposed guise of saving Brazilian democracy, right? Here, look, the conversation between Hugo Motta and Andre Mendonça, who is also a Presbyterian pastor, followed the same line, an attempt to cool things down amid the inclusion of Malafaia in the police investigation. Malafaia became a target of the investigation in May, which looks into actions against authorities, ministers, and agents. But according to the case's rapporteur, these actions are meant to hinder the progress of the case in which Jair Bolsonaro is a defendant for an alleged, in quotes, coup, right? And no, these are demonstrations that people are talking about. People have the right to protest? Man, this is absurd, okay? Malafaia said that Alexandre de Moraes is a dictator. I'm not afraid of him. I'm not afraid of being arrested, of this cowardice that has already happened in countries like Nicaragua against Catholic religious leaders. It happens in China and in radical Islamic nations. Brazil is a country with 90% Christians and 30% evangelicals. He's stirring up a hornet's nest. He is. He really is. Alexandre de Moraes is out of control. The people at the Supreme Court need to rein this guy in. Otherwise, this thing is going to blow up.
Thank you for watching the video until the end. Besides liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel, consider becoming a sponsor starting at just $1.99 Reais. Click the join button below to learn about the conditions and benefits of sponsoring the channel. For more information about our project, visit our websites shown on the screen.